The time has come once again to speak as witches and wizards do. I'm Daniel Dubois,
And I'm Michaela Gaffin-Stone.
and we're your hosts for the Think Like a Wizard podcast. Welcome to season 3, episode 3. I
Aha.
knew one was going to get past me, but and the title for this one is Victory. And yeah, I know a lot of people probably by the time this gets aired are not going to feel very victorious, but you know, losses aren't always what they seem to be, right? And losing a battle doesn't mean you lose a war.
This is true. This is true. And sometimes losing what you thought you needed brings opportunities greater than the ones you were looking for. And that's not anywhere near as cryptic as it might first sound. I mean, just take that apart for a second, and what you thought you wanted to win, you didn't get, and that opened the door to much bigger opportunities. And that's absolutely a theme, I would say, for 2025 is look past the boulder and
Right.
see what's there, because it'll be better than you thought it was.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like all day, that's been actually for the last couple of days, that has been sitting on my mind. I didn't know what today's episode was going to be about, but the idea of things aren't what people think they are, like the idea to continue that, but to look in terms of victories, that's been, especially this morning, has been weighing very heavily on me for this episode. So I think by the end of today's episode, a lot of people are going to be looking at the world differently,
Hopefully.
hopefully.
Yep.
And what was I going to say? You know what? I told Michaela this I might not be sharing this story yet, but I think I'm going to share it now. So I'm going to illustrate getting victory from when you think you're going to lose. So some of you listening are going to have heard this story. Michaela might even have heard this story because I say it a lot. But I will illustrate victory when you think you're losing. So for those of you familiar with the game Hearts, your goal is to keep your points down to a minimum, and the first person to 100 loses. You gain your points by collecting either the Queen of Spades, which gives you 13 points, or a heart, hence the name of the game, and each heart is worth 1 point. I was playing this game, and my points were 99. So this hand that was it. It was the final one. And everyone else was either the high 80s or low 90s. And we're playing, and I get the Queen of Spades. So I'm like in my head, well, I've already seen an ace get caught, right? And now I have the highest point card in the game. I can't win. There's no like we're like two, two tricks in, and I'm already like I'm screwed. I can't possibly win. Why are we continuing? Being the person that I am, dramatic and competitive, I thought if I'm going to lose, then I'm losing spectacularly. None of this, lose by 1 point, lose by 2 points. I'm losing. I'm going to get as many of the remaining hearts as I can, and I'm going to lose amazingly. So a few things happened. One, I underestimated just how good my hand was. Two, I had people who were more than willing to help me collect as many hearts as possible. It's a tactic in the game to let people try to collect all the cards, all the points, because if you collect all the hearts and the queen, you don't get 26 points. You get to give everyone else 26 points. But what happens is there's usually someone holding back a really nice card to stop you. So they let you collect as many points as possible. So I'm playing, and I'm now playing very aggressively. I am going to lose, and it's going to be something to remember. So people are feeding me hearts, and people are, and I'm playing, and I don't care. I'm going to do this. And we get to the last heart, and someone puts down a card, and they think they've stopped me from collecting that card, but I had a better card, and so I pull it out. And then I see people's faces fall, and I'm like, well, what's going on? They said, you have all the cards, all the hearts, and all this, and the queen. Now, in no way. I said, right in the beginning, there was a heart left that it got taken. And they said, no. He says, you got all the cards. And I was like, hold on a second. So my desire, like I thought I was going to lose the battle, right? Losing the war. The hand was over, the game was over. I was going to lose. I couldn't possibly win. Even the closest person couldn't collect enough points to beat me. But yet, so my points stayed at 99 and everyone else went over 100. So I ended up winning the game with my attempt to lose.
Isn't
And the
that
point,
funny?
yeah. And it's funny, right? Because you get a lot of advice on how to win. You have to, one of the big ones is you have to want it. But I didn't want it. I wanted to lose spectacularly. So I put all my efforts into losing, which just ironically turned out to be everything I needed to win. Because one, I had underestimated my hand. I the game was not going as I thought it was. I had accomplices who wanted to feed me lots of points. So in the end, it worked out that I won. And I want people to kind of think about that story and think about life. Like you may not think you're going to win, so you might even give up on winning and maybe even feeling so dramatic that you push yourself to at least have a spectacular failure or do something that would be aversive to winning. And yet it's what you need to do to win, just like I did in the game. It's an old story and a lot of people have heard it, but I think it illustrates the point of victory is sometimes not where you think it is.
It's a bit like learning to fly. You throw yourself at the ground and miss.
Yes,
There
exactly.
you go. I think that was a very interesting story, actually, and I haven't heard it before. I don't know the game either, so it was interesting to me to hear the rules as you went through. And what you brought to my mind is this is going out in 2025, I know,
Mhm.
but recent events have
Yes,
caused people to be either very, very happy and downright smug that their side won, in inverted commas, and other people are just launching into despair and victim mode in
right.
a massive way. And I understand the emotion, but it's one of those things where it's a trap. If
Yes,
you dive into that pit of despair and stay there and make decisions from there, then you will in fact be in despair. Like you're right, it is that bad. It's gonna
Mhm.
be that awful precisely because of your response to it. So now, on the other hand, we have people who are being intolerably smart assed about it and telling everybody who's in despair, well, you shouldn't be like that. You should be like this. And it's like, no, that's bullshit as well. You can't invalidate somebody's emotions. You can't invalidate somebody's response to something. That's
right,
simply unacceptable. Like it's an asinine move. It's tone deaf. It's insensitive. And if somebody tried that on me, I'd have to slap them. Like it's immensely aggravating. And it sets that person up as somebody I would not give up my precious time to have a conversation with. I get
right,
that annoyed by it. But all of that said, it is the personal responsibility of each person to say, okay, this is where I am now, whether you're on the happy side or the despair side, this is where I am now. What am I going to do from here to make this work? What am I going to do from here to make a difference? And that is going to get you out of the pit of despair and into action mode, whatever that needs to look like. And that I think is key. But also, I can't tell somebody to do that.
right.
I can say it here on this podcast because the listener can then decide, oh,
Mhm.
yeah, that's for me, or oh, I don't know who she's talking to, but it ain't me. And all of that's fine. It's here if you need it, but it's here if you recognize it. But it's one of those situations where this is huge. It's part of the 2025 shift, and you got to decide. What are you going to do with this information? Are you going to wallow in the mud and whine and complain? Which is fair. There's a lot that you could do that with.
Mhm.
Or are you going to look around and say, well, okay, this is what's within my power to do? And maybe you go and do something spectacular that you haven't done before. And that can be on any of the sides, right?
Yep.
But the one that I would say is almost irredeemable, though, is the smug jackass that tells everybody else how they get to feel. Like I
Yeah.
cannot express strongly enough how aggravating I find that. It's like gaslighting, it's like invalidating people. And when we say people need to be seen and heard.
Right.
Well, there's a further piece that we don't usually add to that, and that is people need to be seen, heard, and valued.
Yes.
And you are completely discounting their existence by saying, no, you can't feel that way, you have to feel this way. It's like, no, I'm sort of keeping note of who's having that kind of response, and they are off my list. Like I take them out of my environment because that's just too insensitive for me to spend time with.
Yeah. It's funny because when we're recording this, I had just posted the episode on toxic positivity.
Right? And that's exactly
So,
what that is.
yep. So actually, it's just funny how I posted it yesterday, and now you're continuing the message. So it's interesting. It's yeah. What I think right now, what people are kind of missing, but I mean, people are right. They're reacting.
Right. And you can
So
be in that for a while.
right,
That's, you got to process it.
right. So being that this is airing in 2025, what I want people to is to take away the message from the story that I shared because one, you have to remember, I had allies in my victory. They were more than willing to, give me as many points as they could to help me with my spectacular failure. However,
Hmm.
what they didn't realize is that one, they didn't know the cards I had to play, and I had underestimated my hand as well. So no one had the information necessary to know that they weren't going to be able to stop me. So I want people to kind of think about that. Right now, you feel empty, you feel like you're losing, right? But right now, you're probably doing things that are going to lead to the outcome you want. Now, it's not going to be, I would argue, it's not going to be something like your political party is going to win. It's not going to be that at all. It's going to be more like there's a revolution is going to happen that's going to make it doesn't matter who wins, what party is in. And actually, I would argue, look into the world right now. Like, well, I can't say right now because the episode will be in 2025. But some of you may have already noticed in 2024, near the end, after the election, things aren't all what they seem already, even in the victory of the Republican Party right now. It's not what it seems to be. Even though Trump hasn't taken office yet, it's still not exactly what it seems to be. I'll leave people to look into that for themselves. But I've been paying attention to all kinds of sources, and it's like, oh, things aren't necessarily power's not going to go the way it looks like it's going to go.
Mm. Yes, I have theories on that as well, but I don't think I'll share them right now.
No, and you know what? The message I'm
I'm,
getting is not to share it.
yeah, no, I'm feeling that that's something I'm just gonna keep to myself. But I do think that what people think is, uh, who people think is in charge isn't,
Mm,
and that's going to show up. That's about as close to playing my hand there as I'm going to get. But the point really is whether you feel that the right person got in or not.
mm,
Um, it's more a case of things as we know them, no, or as we thought we knew them, are no longer that way. That's
yep.
that's just that's done, that's gone, and I I've heard people describe this as the end times,
Mm,
and I kind of my comment was I thought it would be hotter, but we did just have a surprising amount of snow,
yeah.
so
Well, but this
that
time out, it's supposed to be by fire from what I've heard. Tales
well
I've heard. Yeah.
Well, anyway,
But
the
yeah.
whole thing is it is end times in that the times that we have been familiar with, that we are used to, are not now. It was also end times during the pandemic
Hmm.
because post-pandemic is nothing like it was
Yes.
pre-pandemic. A lot of things have shifted, many of them not for the better. But again, this is where we start to sort ourselves out with who's going to handle this in a sort of positive, proactive, let's make this work kind of way, and who's going to, go down in a blazing ship. And
Mm.
it really is up to many things for the individual, but what are you here for? What do you want to do? How hard are you prepared to work? And
Yes.
in what way? And for what? Is it, see, one of the things that I think has gone horrendously wrong in the world at the moment is that people have moved from the collective good to the individual. And that's incorrect for our species. We are a social
Hmm.
species. You survive in a collective, in a group. This is, that's how you fend off the saber-toothed tigers and so on. You survive in a group. So the fact that everybody's going very individual interest right now, and this works for me, screw you, that is problematic because that's not actually how it works. It doesn't work like that in the spiritual world, it doesn't work like that in the physical world. So this is, I think, where we can look to say, what happened, what went wrong? That did. It's the rise of the individual over the collective. And it's just, and I'm not a communist. Before
Yeah.
anybody accuses me of being a communist, here's the thing. Communism's brilliant on paper. It does not apply to human beings. It too is flawed because human beings don't behave that way. And
Right.
it's just we're trying to shape people into something that they're not. And we're putting an awful lot of effort into a thing that's not our business to do.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. Like, one of the main themes I'm getting is that there are more allies than enemies than people realize. What people are mistaking for their enemies are really their allies. It's just the surface is different. It's just what's on the surface is showing is different. Like, and I want to kind of bring it bigger than just being human. Think about how even different species of animals work with each other. Like,
Mhm.
or to even go like the human body, right? Like our gut biome is like a bunch of separate entities existing inside us, helping us digest. Like they're not our enemy. And if we treat them like the enemy, then we're going to suffer for it. But if we treat them like allies who also gain from how we eat properly, when we eat properly, then we realize we're healthier, right? And it's the same thing. Like, what was I going to say? I mean, I keep getting the image of the bird there that goes into the alligator's mouth and cleans the teeth out there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Like that's
That's
the
what
one
I'm
I,
saying about the collective,
yeah.
right? It's
Mhm.
all about helping each other and not in a sort of let's all have flowers and rainbows. It's
Right.
it's more practically speaking. You
Hmm.
you help me, I help you. There's an image of people in hell, and this is the Christian version of hell, of
Right.
course. But they're all sitting around this massive bowl of soup, and everybody has these spoons with really long handles. And the handles are so long they can't possibly feed themselves.
Right.
So the difference between heaven and hell is hell, everybody's trying to feed themselves and failing, and
Right.
heaven, people feed each other
Yeah.
because the spoons are so long you feed the person opposite you. So
Yes.
that is exactly the same bowl of soup. It's exactly the same spoon. You can even have the same people around you. The difference is what you're bringing to it. What are you prepared to do with this situation? You're going to feed somebody else, or are you going to starve to death trying to feed yourself?
Yep. It's actually it's sorry about that. It kind of makes me think because I'm also currently on the theme of the divine feminine. It reminds me of a video I saw. So they did a race of passing a hula hoop through a group of people. They had
Yes.
men do it, right? And the men all individually tried to figure out how to pass it. And
Uh-huh.
whereas the women kind of just basically made a lineup and the first person ran with the hoops and the people just stepped through it. So they got a
Yep.
lot faster time than the men did, even though the men did do it. And that's
Yep.
kind of like, so we need kind of that harmony of that ingenuity as well as that willingness to work together.
Yeah, it's literally okay, you've been faced with this thing,
Mhm.
right? There's certain groups of people who are going to have very difficult times now. Um, they've been strutting their stuff a lot lately, and now they're going to have to rethink how they do that. But here's the thing, this is your opportunity. How do you up level from even what you were doing before
Mhm.
in an authentic, useful way? Because
Yes.
so far, the yelling louder than everybody else. I'm here and I'm like this and this is my rights and da 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 da.
Hmm.
Okay, but everybody's yelling like that and nobody's listening, and it becomes a battle for who gets that space.
Yes.
It's like pie at that point. We can't all have some because everybody's yelling so hard. So now is your chance to turn that around and say, okay, how do I ally with people who I can help and they can help me? How can we get together and make things stronger than they were before, more functional than they were before? This is the opportunity to up level. And right now, as this is being recorded, people are, crying all over the place and doing all kinds of despair and this is terrible and you can't do this. And if you're this kind of person, then I think that of you and da da da. And there's a lot of accusations going on.
Hmm.
Well, okay, and you can put your energy there for a while, but at some point, and hopefully by the time you're hearing this podcast episode, you've got your finger out of your backside and you're now able to do something a little
Yeah.
more positive with the situation. Because nobody's saying it didn't happen, nobody's saying it's not important. But what we are saying is this is part of the shift. Are you ready
Yeah.
to move?
And you know what? So I noticed posting last episode that we, on Toxic Positivity, that we kind of made a prediction that seems to be coming true already about the election. So already we're starting to establish going forward, not so much, how to put it, not so much necessarily giving people new information, but we're confirming or at least saying, hey, you're on the right path, keep going, kind of idea. I think this is part of what's happening with the podcast. I'm starting to see.
Hmm.
But one of the things I'm noticing is we're still going to have a little bit of more trouble going forward because even the people who are well-meaning are sort of missing the point. They're speaking with their best intention, and I've seen videos, since the election, and it's like I hear what you're saying, I see the intention. I said, but re-listen to what you're saying. There's a
Mhm.
fundamental piece missing. You're still lacking recognizing the humanity of that other person. As kind as you're being, and as kind as you're trying to be, you're missing that person's inherent humanity. And until you learn, you're going to keep producing enemies rather than allies.
And that actually fits with the people I was describing earlier who are saying, you can't behave this way, you have to behave that
Mhm.
way, and you're wrong if you say these things, you need to say those things. And it's like you might be thinking that you're helping somebody, and maybe you're thinking
Mhm.
you're doing some tough love and let's pull you up, but that's just not how it works. So for those people who are well intentioned,
Mhm.
but may not be getting the response that they'd hoped for,
Right.
here's your clue and here's your key. Stop focusing on what everybody else is doing. And although I said earlier, being the
Mhm.
rise of the individual is a big part of the problem,
Right.
we need the collective, but we need the individuals within the collective to have personal responsibility. And that's another piece that's missing. And that's a huge problem. So instead of focusing on what everybody else is saying and doing, have a look at yourself and what are you saying and doing? How are you rising up by stomping on other people, telling them they're wrong? Is that your path? Because if
Yeah.
it is, it's going to necessarily fail. You can't keep doing that. So, hang on a minute, have a look around and see what else can you do that doesn't involve you telling other people what they got to do.
Right. It's making me think in a more dramatic term, quit trying to be everyone else's savior. Now is the time. You're your own savior right now. This is what you're doing going forward. You're going to be to the truest of who you are. You're going to clean house for yourself, and you're going to be the example for others to clean house with. But you're not going to go to other people's houses and clean for them. You're cleaning your own house and you're maintaining your own house. So this politically is a message for everybody.
Hmm.
Both sides should be able to take from this. You're going to clean
That's
your own house. You're going to see what needs to make your house run properly. And if people ask you you can share what you did for yourself. And then they can take those ideas for themselves. And you know what? You can even offer support if they ask for it. But as I always say, help needs to be helpful. Do not take over. Allow people, if nothing else, the dignity of saving themselves.
Yeah,
It doesn't mean they can't ask for
absolutely.
help, and it doesn't mean you can't share some help with them. But everyone right now is responsible for themselves because everyone needs to get themselves in the place they need to be to contribute.
Absolutely. And I think everything we've said so far in this episode is actually equally applicable to both sides.
Yes.
Um, because there's big responses on both sides. And in each case, it's like, okay, you've had your reaction. Now let's look at your response. What are you going to do with that that's positive? You
Hmm.
know, like just how are you going to move forward with this? And I'm not going to waste my time and energy judging people for what they choose, apart from the really irritating jerks that are, telling people they can't feel that way.
Yeah.
That's just a trigger of mine that
Mm.
I really don't like that toxic positivity crap. It
Yeah.
really, really bothers me. But other than that, like it's not, don't worry about people judging you. Just focus in on what do you need
Right.
to do and how are you going to face 2025? What are you here for? What's your 2025 going to look like? And maybe this is a good time to throw out the old attitudes, the old paradigms, like typically at the beginning of the new year, we all go into the whole, I got my New Year's resolutions. Well,
Yeah.
that's twaddle. But also, new year, best year yet,
Yeah.
this is my year, etc.,
New
etc.
year, new me.
Yeah, all
It's
that
forever.
kind of stuff. Like, could we just, I don't know, give it a seat someplace and not look at it that way because that keeps you stuck in old loops. What, how are you going to be in 2025? How are you going to show up? Are you going to be your best self in 2025? And if so, it's not the new year, new me stuff, but it's more, what am I going to do differently that fits with the world we have today, that helps? And if the only person that's helped is yourself, then okay, as long as you're not harming other people, that's totally cool.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing,
Right?
right? Like, I think we're going to do everyone a favor by basically saying this. There are no saviors. Anyone claiming to be a savior at this point who's saying they can save everyone from everything, stay away from that.
Yeah, no, follow the money on that one. And
Yeah.
I saw somebody post, like this is not what you're talking about, but the picture just came to my mind.
Hmm.
I saw somebody post the other day, I think it was the day after the election. Oh, I know that you're hurting and this is terrible and so stressful and listed off a bunch of negative emotions and then said, "Here, I can help you feel better. Buy my book."
Mm.
I was like, oh, that is tone deaf in the extreme, but also cynical, right? I'm going to list off all of your pain, and then I'm going to tell you that you spending money on my thing is going to
Yeah.
make me feel better or make you feel better. And by the way, it wasn't my book, it's somebody else with their book. I didn't do
So buy
that.
my
I did not do that. And my book's on the immune system. It has nothing to do with any of
yeah.
this, really, other than how to reduce stress. But there's lots of
Right.
ways to do that.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's just this is a time to recalibrate. You're gonna have to. So it's like, what do you want to recalibrate to? What's that going to look like? And I recommend that the listener is as open as possible to what that looks like. Because if you think you know how, then you're missing all the other possibilities.
That's the thing, right? Because again, it's not what you think it is.
You,
And I also want to add this joke in. So in the future, when AI takes over, thanks to Michaela's book, the worst it's going to do is give you vegan recipes.
well, okay, that's not a terrible future, is it?
No, well,
Well, it
just
depends, I
because,
suppose, if you're a meat eater, it is, but
yeah, just because the way you said it, because you used Chat GTP, you plugged in all the ingredients or the foods people should be eating, and then it kept giving you vegan recipes.
yeah, no, I put my book into Chat GPT and said, create recipes from the foods that I can't remember how I worded it now, but the foods I've included in my book. And even though I had put meat in there,
Mm.
all but a couple of recipes were vegan, which I thought was hilariously funny. But here's the thing, that's another one of those attitude shifts, like,
Mm.
right? Like I can just picture people saying, "Oh, vegan's the only way to live, and if you don't live like a vegan, then you're
Mm.
killing the planet and you're a bad person and yada yada yada,"
Mm.
right? And then the other side is saying, no, eat meat. This is plants are trying to
Mm.
kill you and all this kind of stuff. And none of that's the point. The point is, this is what ChatGPT took out of what I'd put in there.
Right.
And if you want meat, add meat. Like, it's really not complex.
Yeah.
It's just, but that's an illustration of
Hmm.
how people get very focused in on, no, you have to do it this way or else, or it's that way or else. We've lost the
Hmm.
ability to look past yes or no, black or
Mm.
white, into like nuance. What else could it be? What else could you do? Or maybe,
Yeah.
with the vegan food, maybe it's a side dish. Maybe it's one meal and you eat meat for the rest of the day. Like, it
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. What does it look like?
Hmm.
Whatever you choose.
Yeah. I just thought that was funny because when I heard when I was listening to you being interviewed by Tina, I
Aha.
was like, oh yeah, that's pretty good. Because you're right, because it's what I do too. Like I'll do whatever the vegetables are putting together and then just throw protein on, with
Right.
it. So you can eat however you'd like, even if you take it. But I was never against vegan recipes to begin with because it's just a way of eating vegetables. Like,
It's interesting
yeah,
what people make things mean. And we've become more and more radical about that in recent years. It's
yeah,
more definite, right? Like, if you think this way, then you're wrong because da 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 da. We have cancel culture right now. If you want to push a button, cancel culture
mm,
would be the one that gets me going, because people will turn on someone for something they've said, typically,
right,
and they try and destroy their lives. They'll just have them cancelled. I got into a big dispute with somebody over cancel culture for J.K. Rowling
mm-hmm,
because she had made some comments about trans people that upset a lot of people. And so a whole big movement started: cancel J.K. Rowling,
mm-hmm,
burn her books, don't read her books, etc. And I don't think that helped one thing at all. What
nope,
that did was it caused a deeper division, and it brought things into it that have nothing to do with anything. Her books don't represent
right,
any of what she said, which was taken out of context. So what she said, shades of gray or black as to how upset you want to be about
right,
it. But the whole thing is, who has the right to cancel her? Who has the
mhm,
right to say that she can't have that opinion?
right. And
Because
it's a good example. Yeah, I was gonna say
Because
it's a good
you can
example.
turn that around and say the people that cancelled her should be cancelled. Well,
Yeah,
now we're getting really silly,
yeah,
but that's that whole cancel culture thing. But people were intentionally trying to destroy her livelihood. That was their aim.
yeah,
Now, who says that you have that power to do
yeah,
that to anybody? Who says you have that power? But
right,
this is the culture we're in now. And this
right. And
person
it
I
built
got into a
spectacularly too.
dispute over, she was saying, well, we have to have this ability to control the bad people, I quote.
Yes,
And I was fascinated. Well, who are the bad people? And who determines that?
mm,
With no evidence, no like trial,
right,
no discussion, no opportunity to defend themselves, right? And why is this okay?
yeah. Well, I'll give you even an example. 2016 elections. So so Rosie Perez and Kelly Osbourne, I think they were on The View, I think is what it was, or if there was another show, I don't know. But anyway,
Right.
so Kelly Osbourne made a comment, trying to speak from the perspective of like in she was making a remark about Donald Trump. And so she used the example of if he quits, stops people from illegal immigrants from coming in, who's going to clean, his apartment, his bathroom or whatever. And she meant it from people like Donald Trump view the world in that way. So if he acts the way he does, he's going to hurt himself. And that was her intention, from what I understood. Rosie Perez didn't even take 2 seconds to absorb any of what Kelly Osbourne said and went off on her. How dare you say my people are like this, blah, blah, and went on and on. And I'm like, she's your ally. She's saying exactly the same thing you're saying, only because she worded it and you didn't take 2 seconds to absorb what she said. Now you're making an enemy out of someone who was backing you up.
And she probably launched into a whole thing of let's cancel Kelly Osbourne, right? And it's just okay, you can silence somebody for a while, but you didn't fix anything. You haven't
Right.
had a conversation with them to see if you understood them correctly, or if maybe you could reach common ground somewhere. Even she might change her mind. There's all these possibilities, but you know nothing if you launch into cancel culture. But that's the knee-jerk reaction that we're living with these days. And so
Mhm.
I've seen a lot of things. Well, if you think this way, then I don't want to talk to you and you're gone. I'm doing a little of that with the people who are being jerks and saying, you have
Right.
to do this and you got to do that. That's me saying, you stress me out. I'm not going to deal with that. But I'm
Right.
not trying to get them cancelled. I just don't want them
Right.
in my environment, which I think is fair.
Right.
But when
Yeah.
you're trying to get other people to cancel somebody, to literally stop their livelihood, that is absolutely problematic. But where did we get the idea from that we have a right to do that?
Yeah.
That's a
It's
hell
just,
of a thing.
yeah.
If somebody decided, well, I don't like Daniel Dubois,
Mhm.
he's a wizard, and I don't think
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
okay. We need to get rid of wizards. Let's just cancel him.
Right.
Okay. And now suddenly you're like persona non grata, you're in a world of trouble. And what did you do? You were you,
Yep.
right? And not everybody might agree with that, but you were you. This is not
Yeah.
People shouldn't be cancelled for showing up how
No.
they are. Everybody yells about authenticity, and then when you are authentic, they get upset.
Hmm.
We've got
Well,
a
even
hot mess going on right now.
yeah, because I was going to say like the example with Kelly Osbourne and Rosie Perez was Rosie Perez willingly went out of her way to mischaracterize what Kelly Osbourne said because up until that moment they were agreeing, they were both bashing on Trump. So it's like you were two allies, thick as thieves, and then she used a different description to describe a scenario where Trump is harming himself in a sarcastic, ironic way, and Rosie Perez allowed no bit of nuance or no bit of imagination to see what Kelly Osbourne was saying. And it's like, you know, this is what happens when your side starts eating itself. You're so
Mhm.
worried about being the most virtuous savior of your side that you start destroying your own side.
Actually, I really like what you just said. Your own side starts eating itself. That is,
Yeah.
yes, that's a really good
Well,
description of what's been going on in so many places.
yeah. Well, people usually say like I usually hear politically the left is eating itself, but I'm like, have you not paid attention to your own side on the right? You guys eat each other all the time. It's the
Yeah,
oh, the left is the party of cancel culture, but we wouldn't do that. We believe in freedom of speech. Oh, Colin, I can't see his last name for some reason, but he took a knee. All of a sudden, oh, we have to cancel him. I'm like, what happened to let people say what they want to say? All he did was took a knee. He didn't like
Colin
yell
Kaepernick.
insults or anything. Yeah, he didn't
Yeah.
yell anything. He just took a knee. That's it.
And he was advised to do that as
Yeah.
a respectful protest
Right.
by a friend of his who's a freaking Marine.
Yeah.
So, this is somebody who would respect the flag, and yet things aligned in such a way that he got utterly cancelled.
Right.
And
So he did the yeah.
for what? Because he wasn't saying anything that a whole host of people weren't saying. Like he had a lot of people saying the same thing, but they didn't do it the way he did it, which was actually perfectly respectable.
Hmm.
But a group of people decided that wasn't okay and all hell broke loose. And that's an example of cancel culture on the right for sure.
Right.
Like if we're talking about delicate feelings and what have you,
Hmm.
whatever side you're on, look in the mirror.
That's right.
It's just
That's
like,
what I mean,
yeah,
right? Like
that's a thing.
people don't realize. Like that's why I say, like on the surface, you might seem to be enemies, but below the surface, there's more. There's more in common than there is separate. The only thing you're really seeing in difference is where you're putting your priorities.
That's yeah, priorities are absolutely Yeah, absolutely a thing. And it's fascinating because you and I both know
Hmm.
that human beings are all coming from the same place, going
Right.
back to that said same place.
Hmm.
And we're just here like branches of a tree, if you will, each experiencing things in our own way before we return.
Right.
But, there's no point to this division and this fighting. There's no point to this. It doesn't take you forward, it takes you down.
Right.
So is it really the place you want to go to? Is that really it? And I've told this story before, but it's appropriate here, I think. And that's one of my favorite Buddhist tales, which is the tale of the bird with two heads.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a good one though, and it works here. And the heads is for anybody that hasn't heard it. The heads, instead of being side by side, are a top head and a bottom head. And the top head gets all the fresh fruit from the tree. The bottom head gets to eat everything that's fallen to the ground and is rotting. So the bottom head gets really fed up and says, "Hey, could you just pass me some of the good stuff down here? I'm really fed up of eating rotten fruit." But the top head is very full of itself and very kind of, well, no, I have everything I need. I'm fine. You just carry on doing what you're doing and I'll eat what I eat. So the bottom head got so depressed and miserable, it ate poison. Now they both die. And that, I think, covers that was a couple of thousand years old at least, probably 3,000 years old. But, we're here.
Yeah.
We have arrived at that point.
Mm.
And people aren't always sure whether they're the top head or the bottom head, but they all seem to be desperate to eat poison.
Right. Well, and that's currently what's happening, right?
Yep.
People are There are people willing to eat poison right now,
Mhm.
and I would argue have eaten poison recently in recent events.
Yeah, and the thing is, you just, as I said at the beginning, you've really got to look at what are you going to do with this? If you belong to a group who are under threat right now, and that's a very real
Mhm.
thing. Nobody's going to say it isn't, or at least they might, but we know it's a very real thing.
Yes.
Okay, so you can cry about it and you can, vent your feelings and so on and so forth, but that's not going to move you forward. So when you've done enough of that to get it off your chest, I'm going to suggest that you look around now and see what you can do that maybe hasn't been done before. What's different that you can do that helps?
You
And
know,
do that.
what you just said makes me think of so it works like this. We are as a species, okay? We are part of our main portion because we are a societal species. We actually, whether people believe it or not, want to see others do well because it also reflects on us doing well. And for those of you who may not have thought about it this way, even the most evil of vile of people who are most cynical about humanity know this. And I'll tell you why, because one of the tactics used is you have to dehumanize your opponent to get
Yes,
anywhere. You have to say that
absolutely.
other group is no good before you can get your own side to actually attack them in any meaningful way.
And it's depressing how good people are at doing that.
Right.
And we're seeing it all around the place right now. But again, this is part of the shift that's happening.
Right.
And you got to decide what are you going to do with this information? How are you going to respond to this? It's a big challenge. It's a life-threatening challenge in some places.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yes.
what are you going to do with this? Like, I can't emphasize that enough. It's not, now is not the time to lie down and give it up. Now is the time to stand up and say, okay, yelling about it hasn't worked. Um, Telling people how they ought to feel about this hasn't
Right.
worked. Public awareness efforts haven't worked.
Mm.
What else could there be? What would that look like?
Yeah.
And I don't have an answer to offer today because it's not my place, it's not my business to give an answer, but I'm here to ask the questions like what else is possible?
Yeah.
It's a really
I
good
would,
question.
yeah. I'm going to offer this idea. This is to continue with what I was saying. So, so much so that you have to dehumanize that even in the worst of regimes, guards will let people go. Guards will see the humanity, or soldiers will see the humanity in their enemies and will allow a few to slip by the line and let them go on their merry way or won't report them. Or even in firing squads, right? What's that old cliche about firing squads? Everyone thinks they don't have a live bullet. So when they
Mm.
fire, because you can't get people, even actually, so whether if this is true or not, right? Because as I like to say often, I can neither confirm nor deny. I can only give you what I heard. So, in since basically the idea of mutually assured nuclear annihilation has been a thing. Every year there's tests run to make sure the systems are good, and every year there's a practice on to decide to launch. And even in a simulation, from when I heard this story, only two people have ever launched. Even the theoretical idea of annihilating the species and most of the world is too much of a weight to bear. Like I said, even virtually, people have a hard time bringing themselves to it. And these are people entrenched in the idea of we have an enemy, versus we are the good, they are the bad. Even they have a hard time. So what I'm trying to say with this one is look at your allies, look at your enemies, and then look at your potential allies. But don't overlook your potential enemies as well. Those hiding among you who are pretending to be your friends. But look at where you can actually pick up new allies.
I have to say, those who have been pretending to be friends, that's a really important one. And I've been doing a lot of discovery on that
Hmm.
in recent times. And again, it's a piece of information. It's like, okay, I see you, I hear what you're saying, and I recognize the impact of that.
Hmm.
And I'm disappointed that that's what it is, but okay, then
Yeah.
I have to move forward with this piece of information. It shifts your worldview.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's happening so much. And, people who, there's no way this guy's going to win. She's got to win, and so
Yeah.
on. And how did they feel about that? And what were they planning with that? It didn't go that way. So now what have we got? And will it go the way that they think? I don't know. It's just as you've said before, nothing is quite what it seems, but I think we got to navigate this.
Right. And I
It's
don't
no
even mean
good
that in
wishing
some
it away.
mysterious way. I don't even mean that in a mysterious way. It's just we're so busy, like I said, right? We can program our brains to look for certain cues to help us find things faster. And other people can try to convince you what cues to set up. And that's why things aren't what they seem, because we've now absorbed so many external suggestions for what cues to look for that we're allowing ourselves to be blinded to potential allies.
And again, that I think that speaks to the need to know how something's going to look.
Right.
And that includes your friends, your enemies. What defines somebody in that category? And it might not be as obvious as you think. There's some fairly clear and obvious ones. Somebody who obviously wishes you harm, you're not going
Mm-hmm.
to put them in your friends camp. But there's a lot of nuances around that make people just as dangerous in a more subtle way. So
Right.
again, it's time of awareness. We really got to be prepared to see things differently
Yeah.
because they are different.
Mm-hmm. And that's why, once again, it's important to be yourself because as you be yourself, this reveals who your friends are and who your not so friendly friends are.
And it becomes increasingly difficult to maintain a facade, I think,
Yes.
if you're under challenge all the time by, all this stressful input.
Mm-hmm.
If you're literally just being yourself and looking to navigate this the best way you can, then you don't have to deal with all that stuff chipping away at your armor. You don't have to worry about that. But if you're trying to fit into somebody else's vision of you, then you're on pretty weak ground. It's a tough place to be. So yeah, there's so much going on, and then there are different people messing with things in the spiritual world that they
Right.
might want to be careful with. Yeah, there's a lot going on a number of levels.
Well, Yeah, like we've been for the most part keeping the spiritual stuff theoretical and been more getting into the practical of people, individuals in the material world in our discussions. But we never, and we throw sometimes things in there, right? Like as I had said, you may be putting your energy out there to get a certain output or a certain outcome, but it doesn't mean that there aren't people out there who know how to use your energy against you. And I don't know if episodes going forward will actually get into that kind of stuff. We'll see.
Well, protection is the first thing that comes to mind. Protection circles. I woke up thinking about one this morning, funnily
All
enough.
right.
I was doing a protection circle around the house as I was waking up, like just um, not physically, but
Right.
I was very clear about how I was doing it and where I was going, and I had my path and everything. And I
Hmm.
thought, oh, that's an interesting thing to wake up in the middle of. I
Yeah.
completed it before I got on to do anything else, but it's yeah, there
I'm
are
glad
different
you did.
things you can do from here, but I'm all about protection stuff. That's good because when you feel protected, you have a stronger foundation.
Yes. You feel because you can practice, you can grow, you can make your mistakes, you can do all those things. But it's interesting that you felt that way.
Mm,
I mean, it's not interesting in that I have anything connected to it, but it's interesting given part of what we're talking about. That just also
yeah,
happens to coincide.
yeah. No, I woke up with that very clear, and it's always Technicolor and 5D and all the rest of it. It's like, yeah, that was the thing. Um, Yeah, it was interesting. I think it was dealing with the gate that's covered in ivy here at
Right.
the house. That part woke me up because it was a bit tricky to navigate.
Mm.
I had
Hmm.
to unlock something that's been shut for a long time. So there was a few things here. One is I'm opening something that's been closed for a while,
Right.
and I'm trying to not break the protection while I do that and not damage the ivy that's on the gate.
Right.
So there were things I was having to navigate, and that complexity woke me up.
Hmm. You know what? Now that made me think of more things. So far, we've been discussing human allies and human enemies. But when you were talking about, being careful of the ivy, this made me really think. You have different allies out there in the world, animal, plant, I'd argue mineral,
Mhm.
because if you look at crystals, especially, you know, they have very much a potential for conducting spiritual energy. Well, everything does because everything, it's a, as I would argue, it's a fundamental force of the universe. So it pervades everything just like all the other fundamental forces. But, anything with an intelligence behind it of any kind pretty much can be used, or I say can be used, can be worked with. Worked with being the key thing. Because work with means you're in a partnership, not as opposed to forcing it to do whatever your will is. It's like having spiders in your home. You may not like having spiders in your home, but if you kind of leave some hang around, they start eating the bugs that come in that aren't as good for you. The pests start getting eaten by the spiders in your house. So it's not that you and the spiders are buddy buddy, but you kind of have a symbiotic thing going on that helps your home.
You can coexist.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it speaks to where your energy is at as well. And I'm just thinking about this now as we're talking, but the desire to move things without damaging them,
Mm,
that's a care, right? That's trying not to have a negative impact.
right.
And to me, there's no reason why you would want to have a negative impact. It's like, no, it was there. Let's just leave it where it is and not do any damage. How can I do what I need without damaging the other thing or the other person? That's a good question, is how can I move forward
Mm-hmm.
without harming anyone?
Is it your best protection is not to have enemies in the first place?
Yeah, that's good luck with that one.
Yeah. But your next best option is to reduce the amount of enemies you have.
Or at least to not give them,
Yeah.
not feed them energy, right?
Right.
Like not give them stuff to work with.
Yeah. So don't go
That's
cultivate more enemies. At
ideal.
least keep, at least try not to go past what you already have.
Yeah,
You're
I
more
mean,
important
the
than
thing is, if
reducing
you
those
do,
ones.
if you are going past what you already have, then you're focusing too hard on the wrong damn thing. Which is
Right?
what I keep saying. It's like, no, instead of focusing externally at what everybody else is doing and then judging them for it, what are you doing and can you be in integrity?
Yeah,
Like it's that shift of focus that we have personal responsibility. And when we take that, we can help the collective that we're a
right.
part of. But we've got it all messed up, really is. We put the responsibility on everybody else, and then I want what I want and screw you. And it's just, we've kind of turned that around.
Yeah,
And okay, interesting experiment, people, didn't work. Can we put it back, please?
yeah. It's funny, right? Because it always makes me think of the idea of being just another brick in the wall or just another wheel in the cog, another cog in the wheel. But it's like, regardless of the fact that there's X number of bricks you can always bring back to replace the one that was lost, you have to replace that brick. That shows you how much value that brick had, even if the value was temporary. As long as that brick was in its place, it was important.
True.
Your wall is not whole as long as that brick is not there. Your wheel does not turn as long as you don't have the proper number of cogs to let the action work. So even if, like, you could say, well, I have 10 replacement cogs, so that's fine, but you still need a cog in there regardless of which one is there. So the one in there is very important.
Right. Yeah. It's I don't know when in 2025 this podcast episode's coming out, but I'm curious
February.
as to how it's being received in February.
Well, because this will be,
Where are we at now?
yeah. So this will be at the beginning of February or mid-February, depending. And so, like I said, right, the new administration will have moved in, the old administration will have moved out. Some policies will start to slowly take effect. And it's a good time for people to really get their stuff together, to really look forward to what they need to do. And how does it go? I'll put it like this. When I was a kid, when I say kid, I say teenager, you got away with like, and so from time to time we would drink underage, right? And some, from time to time you get caught. But if you don't give the police a hard time, and of course, depending where you are and who the police are, who gets you, you get away. Like you get, a slap on the wrist and go about your business, kind of a thing, as long as you're not drinking. Whereas, well, even as an adult, right? If you show respect to the people whose job it is to do something, and you're in the wrong, no point giving them a hard time. If you work with them, you get more leniency usually.
How I wonder who that's for.
Well, it's actually meant for anyone who thinks they're going to be in trouble for being who they are. There's a way of
Hmm.
handling it. You can either aggravate the situation, and I'm not saying you have to kowtow and kiss boots. What I'm
Mm-mm.
saying is you remove enemies a lot of times when you make the person not feel like your enemy.
I really want to see how that's going to play out.
Me too, because it's a weird story to
That's
tell.
that's going to be interesting to see how, yeah, how that operates and how it doesn't. But one thing I gotta say is appeasement,
Hmm.
which is not what you were saying, I know, but
Hmm.
appeasement never works. So
Well,
anybody who's
appeasement is
considering
different.
that as anyone who's considering that as an option and mistaking what you just said
Hmm. Yes,
for appeasement, no, that never works.
I'm glad you pointed that out because you're right. Because that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying appeasement.
No, I
Appeasement is
know.
different. Appeasement is showing you are powerless.
Yeah,
Showing
appeasement
respect. Yeah,
is the kowtowing and the
yeah,
oh, never mind me, I'll just,
right,
go and lie down and become a doormat kind of stuff.
right,
But that does not work.
right. But showing respect is showing equality. It's not showing that you're weak. It's showing that you are willing to work in a way that's how to work that properly. People prefer, like in general, there is people need to know they're not doing all the work, and people need to know that there's places they can rest, and other people will pick up the burden when necessary, even if not permanently, just give you a time to lay down your burden. And if everyone's always fighting you, then you don't see where you can put down your burden and get the rest you need. But the minute you see people not increasing your burden, at least, and maybe even reducing your burden, you tend to favor those people. Even if not initially consciously, you start to get favorable feelings toward them. Just pay
Again,
attention to manipulative people, you'll see it.
again, this is going to be interesting to see what anybody listening does with this and how it plays out. 2025 is just going to be fascinating.
Yeah.
And, you can't say often enough, you got to pick how are you doing this? How are you going to go through this period of shifting? Because it's happening. And nothing, I would say don't hold on to anything too tightly
Right.
because it won't make a difference. It won't stay, even if you hang on as tightly as possible. Things are going to shift, and that's just how it is. If you're holding an ice cube in your hand and you want to keep that ice cube, well, okay, but it's going to turn to water and drip through your fingers no matter what you do.
Right.
At some point, it's going to do that. So holding on tightly isn't the answer.
That's right.
It really isn't. It's like
Yeah.
flexibility is more the answer. And people will often misquote.
Mhm.
The survival of the species is the survival of the fittest. It's not true. It's the survival of the one who can adapt the most. It's your adaptability. It's not the fittest. It's not the
Yeah.
strongest. It's not the biggest bully or the loudest mouth. Nope. It's the person who can adapt despite all of the things. That's the one that survives.
Yes.
Where's your adaptability quotient? Like, how adaptable are you? And where can you build that adaptability? That, I think, is going to be something you need to put in your backpack on that path because adaptability is required at this point. We all have to
Yeah.
do some of that.
Well, even the notion of fit, I remember my nephew brought this up because he likes to go deep into these subjects. Probably wouldn't surprise anyone to know he's autistic, and so it really spurs him into his research. And he shared this idea with me. Fit is not as in your physical fitness or your mental fitness. It's, do you have what you need to survive in this environment? And he pointed out, like even a person who, uh, we'll say an 85-year-old who's blind, on medication, deaf, walking with a cane, and needs assisted living, they're still alive, so they're fit to be alive because everything in the environment permits them to be alive. So when you can no longer survive in your environment, you're no longer fit to be in your environment.
Okay, that's kind of playing with the words
Yeah.
somewhat, but it's fine. It works. I mean, also you could say that person who's deaf, blind,
Okay.
and has the walker and they're in assisted living and all the rest of it, they also adapted,
Yep.
right? They adapted to the new reality that they're living in.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you have to be adaptable is really key because,
Mm.
when we had the pandemic, a lot of people were saying, "Oh, I can't wait for it to go back to the way it was. Oh, I hope it really goes back to the way it was. Why aren't things the way they were?" And it's a very natural tendency for human beings to want the familiar, right? This
Mm-hmm.
is something your subconscious is programmed for, is let's look for the familiar things. We want to go back to how it was. But the reality is that doesn't happen. It's not a thing. It can't happen because we've moved on. We've shifted from that. And things that have changed don't change back. It's like trying to unboil an egg. If
Right.
it's boiled, the protein has been denatured, it's changed, and you can't unboil that egg. I don't care what you do to it, but it's changed forever. It's done. And that's how we're living now, is what was before pandemic is gone. What was in the 50s and 60s is gone. We're not getting that back.
Yeah.
It's not possible. It's like dipping a cup in a river and expecting to get the same water out twice. It doesn't happen. So, there's a fundamental flaw in the reasoning here, but it's definitely in people's comfort zones to think that they want what was.
Yeah. And it's funny because this is actually what was isn't what it was, what you think it was either. Because most people think back, right? Like, oh, look at the 50s and the 40s and that. And people came back from World War II and they started businesses and, you know, like as if everyone came back, pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and just started out of nowhere. It's like there was government funding.
And it wasn't as ideal as
Right.
people like to think. I mean, the generations, you can look at them from behavioral perspectives, I often do. And, the boomer generation who came out of, their parents were in the war for sure.
Hmm.
And so they came from a generation of lack, right? Their parents were
Hmm.
had this mentality of we
Yes.
we don't have what we need. So they knew lack and they fought really hard in a capitalist environment to get all the things. Got to have
Right.
the house that you can walk around, two cars. Sure, we'll have the number of kids that we're supposed to have because that's part of having all the things. And
Hmm.
and this was chasing the dream, right? This is exactly what it looked like. But that generation was so busy in pursuit of that that they didn't get to enjoy it, and their kids got to raise themselves,
Right.
which is Gen X. Now,
Hmm.
Gen X is at the center of a lot of problematic things, including stuff going on right now. Why? Because it's a generation that raised itself. If you've read The Lord of the Flies, then you
Hmm.
have a really good idea as to why this isn't going well. That's an issue. And then you got the millennial generation, and God love them, they're doing their best with a pretty poor hand, right?
Right.
And then we bring in technology at this point,
Yes.
and the generations, some of the millennials, and certainly the generations forward from there, are now wired to a different machine. And if you want to go Terminator on this one, that probably isn't a bad idea. Think Skynet. This is
Yeah.
absolutely, people are feeding them information and disinformation all the time. I mean, those of us that didn't grow up with internet have a problem with this and are affected by it. Can you imagine if you've been
Right.
wired to that from the get-go?
Hmm.
Wow. So, yeah, of course we are where we are. That's not a surprise. And you can see how that happened. But those ideal times where, everybody, the wife stayed home and looked after the kids, and dad went out to work and yada yada in the 50s, I think, to some degree in the 60s, but that was shifting. It's like, yeah, it started then. Maybe you could say it started during the wars, but the problem isn't from now, it's from then. So wanting to go back to what was,
Right.
it's not going to help. It's not what you thought it was.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly it, right? Even there's like even not going into big grand ideas, like same nephew one day came to me and he says, he says, I was watching this we had a lot of buddy cop movies in the 70s and early 80s. And well, actually even into the early 90s, I think. But anyways, he was like, oh, I was watching this cop show from the 70s, this movie. He says, and there was like people weren't being super racist and super homophobic and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, what did you think the 70s were like? Like as a kid, I remember, you included people, you looked past their differences to see what was this, what you had in common so you could all work together. Like that message was, I remember as a kid there watching cartoons on Saturday morning and having that message drilled in constantly on like every show and every like, after the show was done, there was like the main character would come out and talk a little bit about what happened on the episode to, bring home these ideas. And it's like, I'm like, yeah, as we grew up in an environment where inclusiveness and trying to be your best towards everyone was like, that was the main thing. Like as a generation, we grew up with that.
Depends on the environment you were in,
Yeah.
because people in the deep south, for example, I'm going to say they probably have a different story from then. It's cultural as well. And, why does that arise? Well, this is where we really need history taught in schools, and the real stuff. And by the real stuff, I
Mm.
mean a range of history, not just one perspective. I went through a phase of reading biographies on people that I thought were interesting. And I came to the conclusion that I needed to read at least three biographies on any given person,
Right.
because one biography gives you a viewpoint.
Yeah.
Two, shows you where some common features are in the biography. So chances are those are accurate. But three gives you a more rounded view. And, more is brilliant, but, boy, you really are hooked onto that person at this point, right? So up to you how in depth you want to go. But reading one doesn't tell you anything solid. And it's the same thing with history. If you have
Mm.
one perspective and that's it, and you don't get the other people's perspectives, then you've learned one perspective. You have not learned
Yeah.
history. And then we are doomed to repeat it.
Yeah. It's funny because when I first went to college, I was studying graphic design and art history. I had two art history classes in each semester, and my art history teacher was like fanatical for art history. Like, and he had like, diaries and journals of people around the artists and not just the artists themselves.
Right?
Right. And you really start to learn the Renaissance, this enlightened period, was heavily propagandized.
And I think a lot of things that we think we know about,
Hmm.
we don't. We know it existed, we know it happened, but we don't have the detail that would give us the chance to form an informed opinion of it and to get the lesson from it. That's the thing, is the way history is taught now, and I think it's been taught this way for a very long time, actually. But the way history is taught, we don't get the chance to form a perspective. You're given a perspective, and
Right.
to the victor go the spoils. It's who gets to write that book, who
Yeah.
gets to give you that opinion. That's all you've got. You don't have the facts, so you can't make you can't decide what you're going to do with this information. So we're going to repeat it because it's incomplete.
Yeah.
And
Well,
in behavior, you get into behavior cycles and you keep repeating them until you learn the lesson.
right.
It's the same thing. It's that.
Yeah. Because I was going to say too, like being an avid watcher of educational television growing up and even still as an adult, the things I've learned about topics when I was watching a show that wasn't about that topic,
Right.
but where the stories overlap, and you see it from the outside perspective. So it's not censored in the same way. It doesn't have to follow the official story. So you get how it affects the other topic. And the things I've learned, like, I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I remember I was watching something on voodoo. And while, up until that point, my understanding of the slave trade was like most people have is, the Europeans went to Africa, conquered all these tribes, dragged them out, and sold them. So that was my understanding from the way I always been taught, right? Until I learned to show on voodoo. And the woman was like, I can't go any further in North America on voodoo. I have to go to Africa. I think she's by specifically Nigeria. I'm trying to remember. I don't know. Anyway, I learned the lessons. I don't necessarily remember the details. So, but she said her big issue is that the person who's considered essentially the Pope of voodoo, his family made a killing off the slave trade. His family was one of the biggest slave traders, you know? And then I was like, well, what's, and then she kind of talked about it and they kind of did like a little side history lesson. And I'm like, oh, and then I started researching it myself. This scene is like, oh, so that's what I'm like, because at the time, white Europeans couldn't go deep into Africa because they didn't have the immune system for the illnesses that were there. So they can only go so far deep into it. So if they wanted people deep, someone else, the native people had to bring them out. And this
Mhm.
actually comes across to be a lot of a common theme in a lot of documentaries I've watched over the years on different topics. Tattoos, the same thing. People are willing to sell themselves out. And I have shared it before too, the storyteller on Canada Day telling the story of
Yes.
the Broken Arrow. And I'm like, would you guys quit telling these stories? Like you had a good run of everyone thought you were completely innocent and did nothing wrong. And now you're telling us about how you guys betrayed each other, sold each other out. It's like,
And that's human history over and over
yeah,
again. So I don't really know where I'm going with this right
okay.
now, other than to say we have to do it differently.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing, we got to do it differently. This is not working. This we're just in a perpetual cycle that gets more and more destructive as it goes along. It's like a downward spiral. And, if
Right.
we keep doing the same things the way we've been doing them, then yeah, we'll end up further and further entrenched. And I don't know, I don't want to be sitting at a big soup bowl with a spoon where
Mm.
I'm trying to feed myself, you know?
Yeah.
That's just
Well,
not my idea of a good time.
right.
Um,
So that's why I say pay attention to who you think are your allies, not just your who you think are your enemies, but who you think are your allies, because time and time again, history has shown the minute
mhm.
they know you, like the people who mean you ill, when they know they have your trust, that gives them the power to do the ill they want to do to you.
Well, if you look at the various trades that go on right now, such as human trafficking,
Hmm.
that is successful by people who you don't think are going to do something like that
Right.
doing that. That's exactly how it works, is unsuspecting individuals will end up in the clutches of someone who you would not think was doing this.
Right.
And so they get away with it because everybody buys into the whole, no, they wouldn't do that. Nah, no, that's not that person. You just, nah, that's
Yeah.
just bad talking. And the reality comes out much, much later that actually they did that and worse.
Yeah.
It's typical that it's the person you don't think is going to be doing those things. So again, your friend versus your enemy.
Mhm.
Really pay attention to people who, first of all, they'll tell you. You kind of have to listen when somebody
Yeah.
tells you who they are, because they're telling you. Like there's no excuse for not knowing.
Yeah.
And the information's all out there, and then people are shocked when it all gets put together, and it's like, oh, but how did we miss this? Well,
Yeah.
because you didn't look. It
Yeah.
was there. Happens a
Well,
lot.
yeah. Well, one of the biggest advice I always give to people is the what people choose to lie to you about is as important as what they choose to tell you the truth about.
True.
So when you're watching people try to manipulate you, how they try to manipulate you tells you a lot about them.
It
If
does.
someone is if someone is trying to show you how, non-materialistic and how pious they are, and then they try to basically win you over by promising you material gains or by trying to tempt you with material gains, it's like, hold on.
Hmm.
You're telling me the true value in life is not to be materialistic, but yet you're trying to tempt me with material stuff. What's going on here?
Yeah, it tells you a lot about their lens for sure.
And
But
that's what,
just
yeah,
yeah, the recurring theme for me today is definitely, look at what you're doing rather than worrying about other people, but also pay attention to the people in your environment.
yeah,
When they tell you who they are, listen to them. Because, people often give themselves away very,
yeah,
very clearly. And it's much, much later when somebody says, oh, hey, there's this thing about this person. It's like, no shit, Sherlock. That
yeah,
came out 30 years ago. Where were you? You know?
yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? Like a lot of things fall apart. A lot of good people might start with good intentions, but as whatever they're trying to do grows bigger, you kind of see it fall apart because it's like going back to Harvey Weinstein, right? Weinstein. Like the idea of a casting couch goes back so far. Like it's almost a running joke even in the entertainment industry that there's a casting couch. And yet when this all really came to a head in 2016, people were acting surprised, like, "Oh my God, did you know there's a casting couch?" I'm like, "Yes, I knew as a kid there was a casting couch because of the jokes, like, from watching adult stuff, like not even like adult, but just like something more on the level of The Simpsons or like the Three Stooges or something like that level of adult humor, which as a kid you're not really supposed to pick up on, but it's like even that kind of humor was talking about, the casting couch or where does that go? We'll respect directors' rights or whatever, like those kinds
Hmm.
of notions. It's like it's not a surprise, and why is everyone acting like, oh my God, this is a big discovery happening behind the scenes that no one knew about?
Yeah. Like I said, people will often, if the information's there, you're just not looking at it for some reason. And then we're going to repeat the mistakes of the past because we didn't get the lessons. And that's in so many cycles.
Right. But we have a chance to break it right now. That's what
We do.
2025 is the year to really look into yourself, get your house in order. Yes, if people need help and you can help, fine, but they're responsible for their house as well.
Hmm.
And once everyone cleans their houses out, it's the houses that aren't clean, everyone's going to notice.
It's different when you're helping someone to when
Mhm.
you're taking over their responsibility.
Right.
There's a different degree of energy, and it can be easy to blur the lines, I think. Particularly when somebody has grown up as a people pleaser and they have a talent for fixing
Mhm.
things, and it's very hard for that person to not, because they see a problem and they're just like, oh yeah, I can deal with this. And they run over the person who's supposed to be dealing with it because they don't really see them, they see the
Right.
problem.
The light was changing.
Ah, they don't see the person they're helping, they see the problem they're working on. And so the emphasis
Mhm.
shifts, and now you're saving the day rather than helping that person in the direction they want to go in, you know? Difference between picking somebody up off the floor and giving them a piggyback.
Yeah, and it's funny because it brings. While you're saying that, I'm thinking of that expression. To a hammer, every problem is a nail. If you're going to help people, but you're a hammer and you view all the problems as a nail, are you really helping the person when their problem isn't a nail?
On occasion, you will be, because the problem will occasionally be a nail, but by and
Right.
large, that's probably not the best option.
Yeah.
It's We're all a work in progress, right? And we're all doing the various things that we've been talking about today ourselves as well,
Oh,
on
absolutely.
occasion, and maybe more often than we realize. And we too are trying to figure out, well, okay, how do I not do that on repeat? And how do I do this differently? And what does that look like? So, just in case by this point, first of all, yay, you're still listening. Thanks. But also, by this
Yeah.
point, if you think, oh, well, these two think they got the answers to everything. No, we're working on a path of how can we navigate this? I'm using the word navigate intentionally because it's not like I have all the answers and I know where I'm going. It's more, all right, I got a compass. Let me just tap it a little bit and
Right.
see if it's really pointing true north. And now I'm gonna try and figure out how I get around these obstacles. But it doesn't mean I'm always gonna do it right, and it doesn't mean I'm always gonna do it well. But it does mean I have my compass and I'm trying. And that's where we're trying to bring other people to, is a place of, all right, it might not be easy, but we got a thing to work on. Let's go work on it.
Yeah. It's funny because I always think of it. I think of it like this. So there's an obstacle coming. That obstacle happens to be a lion. Now, we're not here to tell you how to beat the lion because for you being the lion, you may not do it the same way we do. So what we're really trying to do is one, we're showing you how to recognize the lion. We're giving you options to avoid the lion in the first place. And if you have to, here's means you can look at yourself to see if you can find a solution for yourself. But we're not actually giving solutions. We're giving ideas to things to look at, clues to look at to help yourself and notions to consider to help yourself. But we're not, because like, literally when we say you got to be yourself, we can't tell every individual what to be. We have our personal biases. I have mine, you have yours. So
Uh-huh.
we're not going to be the best for everybody anyways.
Well, I already told you some of mine today. Like
Yeah.
the people who go around telling everybody else what to do in a really obnoxious and smug way. It's bloody annoying. But that's my thing. It might not bother somebody else.
Hmm.
You might look at them and just laugh, or you might look at them and say, "Oh yeah, there's some good ideas there," and maybe there is, but I still maintain the timing sucks. So,
Yeah.
different viewpoints, but. I love the way you said, we're here to tell you how to recognize the lion.
Hmm.
And I would say we're also here to tell you that it's possible to recognize the
As the
lion,
lion. Yeah.
and that you can do this. It's
Yes, to look
possible.
for the signs. Because I like the idea of the tracker analogy of like, listen, we're telling you there's a lion up ahead. We're not telling you exactly where it is but we're showing you this is what you look for tracks. This is when you see this disturbance in the environment, if you see this kind of scat there, if you see the other animals go the other way, okay, there's probably a lion over there.
Right. And
And
this is what we know so far, and what we believe to be true, what we've experienced, or however we got there. But, again, we can't tell you how to be you.
right. And we're not telling you whether or not you should avoid the lion or confront the lion either.
No, not at
I'm
all.
telling you to be you. If that means you being you means you confront the lion, then that's you. And if you being you means you avoid the lion, then that's also you.
Uh-huh. And hopefully you've got the necessary skills for whichever path you choose.
Yes.
That's the other thing. And I think we really need to figure out for 2025, like, what skills do you have that are going to help? And what are you missing that you could get? The
Right.
skills can be learned. So what do you need moving forward? What would be most helpful for you in the best expression of who you are? And what makes you feel good? What lights you up? These are really good um, measures, I think. Because here's the thing, when somebody gets sucked into the black hole, they get into violence, they get into anger, lots of yelling and all of that, doesn't light them up. There's a difference between that rush of adrenaline and having your sacral center saying, yeah, this is it, this is what I'm here for.
Right.
There is a world of difference between those two things. So the one that I'm talking about is the thing that lights you up and makes you feel good. And that's not the adrenaline rush.
Yeah. Well, just to back what you said, when I was going to tell the story today that I told about playing cards, when I first thought about it, I had this whole dramatic way of presenting it. But what I've known about myself for a long time, as much as I have the wording and the flow and the stuff, I always just ultimately prefer to speak plainly on a topic. As much as I have the artistic background and the artistic desire to choose words that are more dramatic than others, it's in the end it was just speak it plainly so that everyone understands it. And so yeah, you do who you are and you do and it reaches the people it needs to reach.
Hmm. Yep. It's going to be an interesting 2025.
Yeah. And I was what I was also going to say is that because part of what I was thinking about too is that both you and I probably are going to have some journeys to share with people in 2025 to show, what we're doing. Like I already
Mhm.
said, right? Like my part of my big discovery is that as much as I viewed myself as someone who helps everybody without, any kind of discrimination or bias who it is, but the honest reality is going into next to 2025, where I'm best suited is to help people to harmonize the feminine energy with the masculine energy. And that's mostly going to be women that I'm going to be working with. And if I'm working with men, it's going to be very effeminate men, which, as we all remember me saying, this goes deadly, hugely against my personal bias. But yet, it's the idea of harmonizing the two because, like, right now, I'm writing this crest words. I'm just loaded with the divine feminine energy, and so even within myself, I have to learn to harmonize it before I can share with other people how to harmonize it properly. So that's me
It's going
going
to be
forward.
interesting. I would actually like to hear from people what what do they need?
Yeah,
What would help? What do you need to know? And if we don't know it, maybe we could find it or find a direction or something. Like, I don't know, but what do
yeah,
you need? I'd love to know that. What would be useful in this space, given what we talk about?
yeah. That's actually a great assignment too for this episode. What do you need?
Yeah, what do you need? And
Figure
full
out what you need.
disclosure, I'm not going to call you out for whatever you choose to do, but I'm not offering blood magic. So that's not
No,
something
but
I
you
not
know,
something I choose to take on, but what do you
yeah.
need?
Well, by time this airs, hopefully we'll have interviewed at least two other people who add to the resources available for sharing. I have
Right.
another person to bring on to interview after we do our next interview. I don't,
Okay.
well, but when that happens, that happens. But I do kind of, going forward, I want to bring on enough guests to give enough resources for people to know where to look for things that they need. It's actually one of the reasons for bringing on guests, not just to expand our own conversation, but to also, you know, at least to the people who listen to our podcast, to show them the options or that they
Yeah,
can share with others.
and it can change direction given different people as well.
So yeah, that's we're yeah, 2025. I've since accepted our position is basically to give people a touchpad, a place to start, a place to, well, I mean, that was the purpose of the podcast anyways, but literally how real it actually feels now that this is what's happening. So,
And a place to come and discuss, right? Because
mhm.
if you want to jump in on the conversation or if you want to contribute in some way, then awesome. You have different avenues for that. And I think that would be fabulous. And if you've got something that you think we need to know, then also fabulous. Like let's get the flow going. Let's get the dialogue going. That'd be really cool. Because otherwise you're just going to hear our version of things. And that's two perspectives, but
Yeah.
there could be more. Why
Well,
don't we
that's
have more?
yeah, because that was something that I was all today, pretty much all day. One of the things I was thinking about was they're getting our perspective, our perspective, our perspective. I brought in Willett. They got Willett's perspective because that's the perspective of someone opening, and that's going to be a lot of people in 2025.
Hmm.
And it's funny how we're speaking about the future, even though technically we're airing at that time. So, so, and it's interesting because Willa's in her honeymoon period. I told her because her flow is leading her to all kinds of discoveries and all kinds of little wins here and there, and she's really, really excited. Even actually, she shared with something to me just before we came on to record, and it's like it's trivial, but it shows her what happens when you pay attention to the flow and don't fight it. And so I said, enjoy it, learn as much as you can from this honeymoon period, because then you start moving into the world and you start to see everybody, and it's like, and then it becomes part of your life.
Trivial might not be quite the right word.
Yeah.
Maybe it's small
Yes.
or, you know, but no, I think that stage is so much fun
Yeah.
because every day there's new things coming and it's just like, wow, did you know this? And wow,
Mhm.
what about that? And I think that's awesome. That's a great place to be. And good timing. Good timing.
Yeah.
Maybe
Well,
we'll
that's the thing.
get
And
to
we'll
talk
bring
to
her
Will
on.
again.
Yeah. She'll
Well,
be
that's
back.
obviously going to happen as we both just said it in different ways at the same time.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? Because expanding perspectives is important.
Hmm.
You know what? I think we're going to do history here and have a short episode. Short by comparison.
Short by this podcast standards.
Yeah.
Yeah, funnily enough, I just got the message that yeah, you're good, you're done.
Yeah. You said everything you need to say. The assignment is out. So just to recap, yeah, start sharing what you think you need to help yourselves move forward with your own journeys. If we
Yeah.
have the resources for it, we'll share the resources. If we don't, well, we'll do what we can to help along.
We'll figure something out, and if we can't, we'll say so.
All right. Yep. So once again, I'm Daniel Dubois.
And I'm Michaela Gaffinstone.
Until next time.
Until next time.